This is a short technical film about the Sonic Pathfinder. It's designed for mobility instructors who know all about long cane training and guide dogs, who know the technical jargon. It's designed for people who've had a look at the Sonic Pathfinder training manual and have read the manual, and if you haven't read the manual, then I want you to read it as soon as you've seen the film. This is the Sonic Pathfinder. It lives in a waist pouch. The best way to manipulate it is to put it on. Having put the waist pouch on, I can unzip the rear pouch, which contains the headband. The electronics is in there. The headband is here. Slip my thumbs in to spring the arms out. Put the device over my head. Flip the earpieces to make sure that they're free, they're spring loaded and they're pulled into the side of my face. Put the cable round the back, out of the way, and just check that it's horizontal and central. There's a little notch there that I line up with my nose, and that's where it sits on my head. I can turn it on and off without taking it out of the bag by the volume control here. It's important to understand, however, that the Sonic Pathfinder is not designed to give you a picture of the world through your ears. It's designed to give you small amounts of information which are relevant to your needs as you walk along using either a long cane or a guide dog. While using the primary aid, the long cane or the guide dog, the secondary aid, gives you small amounts of additional information and useful information. Now, when we go for a walk with the device, you will notice that there are many objects which are not picked up, and you'll look at them and think, well, why didn't the device show me that? I would ask you to ask yourself, did you need to know about that object? And chances are you did not need to know, because what's happening, the computer program in this device is deciding what is relevant to your needs, and what is relevant to your needs at any moment during your movement depends on your walking speed. The device calculates your walking speed and gives you a display depending on the walking speed. It's important when you first try out the Sonic Pathfinder, or when you introduce it to a client, that you choose the right environment. And here is a wonderful example. We need a wide open space, we need a wall, in this case a war memorial, a wall that we can walk up to without falling over a curb or a flower bed. This is ideal. Come to our chosen environment and we put on the Sonic Pathfinder. We take the headband out, thumbs in, head through the gap, make sure the earpieces are free, make sure it's horizontal, just check that center notch, slide the wire around the back, and we're ready to turn on. The important thing about turning on is that you must be looking out into space. If you turn the device on and there's a nearby target, the computer will not boot up properly. If it does that, it will warn you. It will produce a DDAR sound, rather like the sound made by the British police car. I'll demonstrate it to you. I'll purposely put a target here and turn the Pathfinder on, and you will hear the DDAR. Keeps DDARing. That means it's not come on properly. You turn it off and start again. So you look into space. Doesn't mean to say you look at the stars. You look into space just a meter clear in front of you and turn it on. And you hear absolutely nothing. One of the features of the Sonic Pathfinder is, in the absence of an object, it is totally silent. If, however, I don't have good posture and let my head drop, I pick up the ground. And of course, some blind clients have very poor posture, and this is an aid to posture. They've got to keep their heads up. It's important, having switched on, to very quickly test the device, and we do this by doing the Pathfinder salute. You make a nice echoing surface with your hand and stick it up there. That's the center beam. I can hear it equally loud in both ears. Don't do it too close, arm's length, and I can move it out to the side. That's the right hand ear alone, center again, center, left hand ear, and that's checked all three beams, the left, the center and the right. And it's the Pathfinder salute, and terribly important, it's part of the switch on procedure. No DDARs and the Pathfinder salute. I'm now going to walk up to the wall. As I walk up to the wall, you will hear the notes of the musical scale, and get an idea of the pitch distance relationship. And on the lowest note, I'm at the point where I can reach and touch the wall. So here goes, slowly towards the wall. And now I can reach and touch the wall, and now I'm going to walk backwards away from the wall. And you will notice the world has disappeared. The device went totally quiet. Odd, you might think, but remember, the computer in here is calculating your walking speed from the objects it's picking up. In particular, it's working out the time to collision for each object. If you're moving backwards away from the object, that time to collision is infinite. You're never going to collide, so it doesn't bother to tell you about it. Now, it's not a problem. Blind people never walk backwards, so it never really becomes a problem for them at all. Sighted people, when they try the device out, however, invariably walk backwards and find this a very odd phenomena. So when you first show the device to either a sighted person or a blind person, you walk them up to the wall, get them to walk backwards, and then you make light of it. You explain it and say, it's not a problem. I'm going to go for a walk. Now, when I walk, and I'm going to walk without a cane, without a blindfold, no heroics, just using my vision and looking around using the Pathfinder, noticing what it picks up, I'm going to use a lot of head rotations. I'm going to be glancing to the side, I'm going to be looking for silence. If it's silent, I know there's an empty space, I know I can walk through it. I'm purposely going to walk down here in a sort of zigzag fashion, looking for the trees, picking them up, moving away from them. So it's not going to look very attractive, but it's going to give you a demonstration of how you can understand the information that the device is giving to you. So the sun's out, it's ever so bright, I'm off for a walk. Use a Sonic Pathfinder with a client, use is made of this fairly unattractive little package. This is the monitor cable. You, the sighted instructor, wears the earpieces. The red one to the right, the other one to the left. Incidentally, I always keep the monitor cable in its little polythene bag because it's so easy to get it tangled up. We then have to plug this into the Sonic Pathfinder. In order to do that, we unzip the front pouch with the electronics pack in it and pull it out from the back, lifting it out and turning it and slotting it into the pouch like that. Leave the monitor cable to one side. We then unplug the headband, and we can plug the monitor cable into that socket instead of the headband, and we now plug the headband into the socket on the monitor cable. It's dead easy. The only thing is that this will not stow away neatly now, but that's all right. And for the purposes of training, while we're using the monitor cable, the client wears that. You follow closely so the cable doesn't break or doesn't pull your ears off, listening to what the client is listening to on the monitor cable. Was kindly agreed to play the role of the blind subject for this part of the film. I've set the Pathfinder up with the monitor cable. I'm wearing the earpieces of the monitor cable. I'm going to put this on Steve on his left hip. There we go. I'm going to open up the earpieces, the side arms, offer it to him to put over your head, crown yourself with that. I'm going to make sure the band isn't twisted. so it's fairly comfortable. Make sure that the cable goes behind his shoulder, out of the way, that the earpieces are free, not caught in the band. Steve, there's a little notch at the front there that you line up with your nose to get it central, and we have it horizontal. Okay, and I make sure that I stand out of the way and I turn it on, and just to make sure it's working, I pop round the front here, and yes, I can hear it, he can hear it. You can hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me just very briefly explain that had we turned the device on without there being free space in front of you, the device would have failed to boot up properly, and it would produce an error message, and the error message is the dee-dah sound that is rather like a British police car. And if you don't know what a British police car sounds like, it sounds like this. I'm going to be in the way when I turn it on. That's the dee-dah. If ever you hear that, you turn it off, you make sure you're looking into space, so I'm hopping out of the way, and we turn it back on again. And now we have to test it, and so there are two ways of testing it. One is to let your head go forward and look at the ground, so bend down. Okay, so keep your head up. Posture is important. Posture is important, but the best way to test it, because we're going to test all three beams, is to make yourself a nice cup. This is the Pathfinder salute. Hold it out there at arm's length. That's the center beam. Keeping your head still, swing it out there. That's the side beam, that's the left-hand beam. You go with the other hand to find the right-hand side beam. In the center, slowly out. That's the right-hand beam. Those side beams are very narrow, but all that is explained in the user manual. I'm going to take you for a very short walk. We're not using the primary aid, we're not using the cane or the guide dog. I am going to look after safety and guide you. We're going to be concentrating on the secondary mobility device, the Sonic Pathfinder. I'm going to use what's known as the reverse-sighted guide technique. This is the posture that we normally adopt when guiding a blind person, but the sighted person is usually in front, of course. I am the sighted person. I am in charge of his direction and his safety, and I'm going to walk him slowly up to the wall. So Steve, you'll hear the notes of the musical scale coming down, and when you get to the lowest note, you can reach out and touch the wall. So off we go, very slowly, moving towards the wall. Reach out and touch the wall. Okay, I'm now going to walk you backwards away from the wall. And lo and behold, the world has disappeared. And I've explained that to you already. It is not a problem. Blind people don't walk backwards, and I'm sure you'll agree with that. I'm going to take Steve for a walk. We're going to use reverse-sighted guide technique. I'm going to be monitoring what he's listening. We're not using a long cane, we're not using a dog, we're concentrating on the Pathfinder. And what I'm trying to convey to Steve is, first of all, the beauty of a device that is silent for most of the time. So whenever we're walking through open spaces and there's nothing in his way, it's totally silent. I'm going to be encouraging him to use head rotations to look for objects, and I'm going to be encouraging him to negotiate objects, first of all in a fairly abrupt and staccato way, but as we progress, we'll try and get it more smooth, and we'll go smoothly around objects, and we'll have this dialogue going. I will be describing what the objects are that he's encountering, and a little later on I'll get him to tell me what the objects are. Now, of course, training proceeds like this for a short time, and after he feels familiar with the device and the use and the motion of his head and the motion of his body, then of course we stop this reverse-sighted guide technique. We introduce the long cane. Steve uses the long cane. We carry on using the monitor cable, but I don't touch him anymore. And at this point, you know, we're trying to put the cane technique and the Pathfinder together, and it's difficult because, you know, Steve's got a lot to concentrate on, and that becomes hard. But we're not going to show any of that. That's all described in the book, and it's for you to work on later on with a client. We're going to simply go for a walk. Now, I'm going to walk down this left-hand side. It makes more sense for me to be on the outer side of Steve and have Steve on the shoreline, so I can maneuver him into the trees and then bring him out when we pick them up on the Pathfinder. So as you see us walking down here, again, it'll be a bit of a a windy path that we're taking, but we're doing it for a purpose. Steve is learning about the device. Now I'm going to change sides because I want you on this other side. Don't worry about the monitor cable and the bag, and off we go. Pathfinder will work in falling rain, in falling snow, and it'll work in fog. There is a problem, however. If this foam across the front gets saturated, and that can happen in fog, then the sensitivity of the device falls off and there comes a point when it really doesn't work very well at all. So a warm, dry Sonic Pathfinder will work in rain and fog, but a wet one will not. And the way to dry it out is simply to take it into the house, indoors, in a warm room, and just leave it out of its bag in the open air. Don't put it in the oven or the microwave or anything like that. Now it has a rechargeable battery. It will run for 30 hours in between charges, and when it needs charging, the Pathfinder will signal that to you. Remember, as you approach a wall, let me turn it on and just show you those last two notes. So that's the lowest note corresponding to a wall. Do that again. Next to the last note, the last note. Okay, we're familiar with that. When it needs charging, and I can simulate that by plugging in the little charger. I'm plugging it in the device, but I'm not plugging it into the mains. I'll tell you about that in a moment. Now this gives a simulation of what the Pathfinder sounds like when it needs recharging. The lowest note is now longer. The Pathfinder sounds tired. Okay? It means it needs recharging. It will run for 2 hours like this, but really then it will die. So, you know, now is the time to charge it up. When the Sonic Pathfinder needs to be recharged, and I recommend that you do this once every 2 weeks for an overnight charge, it's not necessary to pull the electronics box out of the pouch. You simply zip the zip open far enough to expose the socket. You plug in the charging unit, and incidentally this is an Australian charging unit, and they're different in different parts of the world, but there's a page in the manual which explains all about charging units and how you can obtain a charging unit for your country. So you plug it into the Pathfinder and then into the wall, in this case a socket here, and it's charging up. But in order to check that it is charging, you turn on the device briefly for a few moments. Now that's the tune, that's the charging tune. If you hear that tune, then you know the device is taking charge. You turn it off and leave it overnight. Leave it for 8 hours. Now, if you happen to leave it for longer, it's not going to do any damage. It's not going to set fire to your house or anything like that. But it's going to reduce the working life of the rechargeable battery. So 8 hours is plenty, or 10 hours. You know, don't leave it on charge. Okay, and finally, there is one thing I need to tell you, and this is the secret. The secret. You will remember that the golden rule about the Sonic Pathfinder is when you switch it on, and you hear the DDAR sound because there's an object too close, you turn it off, look into space, and turn it on again. And in fact that's true, and that's what you should tell your clients. I'm now going to let you into a little secret. You can use the DDAR to set up different conditions on the Pathfinder. Let me show you how. If I make the Pathfinder produce 4 DDARs before letting it run, and this is how I do it. Put my target there, turn it on, 1, 2, 3, 4, take my hand away. The device is now set up to be an ordinary Pathfinder, but when I look at a close object, I get that long tone which is associated with the low battery. If I turn to you, I'm looking at the camera person, of course, now, but the long tone is the low battery, so using 4 DDARs, you can simulate the low battery condition. Let me turn it off, and now I can look down again. Remember, I simulated it a moment ago by plugging the plug in, but you can simulate it by just doing 4 DDARs. If you do 5 DDARs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you get the condition which is described in the manual as the campanologist's nightmare. I recommend you have a go with it, and you'll see how confusing it is, okay? 6 DDARs gives you yet another condition. Okay, I needn't do it, but if you set it up with 6 DDARs, then you get a device which has 8 zones on the left, 8 zones on the right, 8 zones down the center, but it has none of the artificial intelligence. What this means is that if you walk backwards from an object, then the world does not disappear. And I would recommend that you experiment with these different DDAR conditions. However, that's secret information for you and not really to be shared with the client. The golden rule as far as the client is concerned is that if it makes the DDAR sound, switch it off, look into space, and turn it on again. Okay, good luck with the Sonic Pathfinder, and if you need to contact me, I'll be only too pleased to give you advice and help. Thank you very much.